This is video 2 for lesson 11-7. I am at the top of page 800. And let's read the little sentence paragraph at the top. It says, if you are given the equation of a circle, which we've just studied, you can graph the whole circle by making a table or by identifying its center and its radius. So let's look at example 2 and practice that. So bear with me for a second while I set back up in a different direction. Okay, graphing a circle. Graph each equation. The equation of this circle says x squared plus y squared equals 25. Now we know that the 25 is going to be r squared because in the equation of a circle, it's equal to r squared. And so the 25 is r squared, so r equals 5. We now have our radius, but we need to start surmising what x and y could be. So what they tell us is since the radius is plus or minus 5, use plus or minus 5 and the values in between as your x values, and then solve to find your y values. This sounds complicated, but it's really not. So we took the square root of 25 right there, which was plus or minus 5, and we make our chart starting with one end of that spectrum, which is -5, or we could have put the +5 on this end either way. And then we keep going all the way through the table, covering the numbers in between until we get to the positive version, or whatever the opposite is of where we started. So, since it could be positive or -5 as our radius, our table covers those two numbers and the numbers in between. Now, of course, our radius could not actually be -5, but this is how we figure out what y could be based on one of these numbers, and that gives us the negative parts of the circle, the quadrants that would have negatives in them. So let's start with -5. If x were equal to -5, what would y be? Well, -5 times -5 is 25. So then to solve for y, we would have to say, and I'm only going to do this for you a couple of times to save time, but let me write the equation. X squared, and I'll only write it once, plus y squared equals 25. So now let's try my -5. -5 squared would be 25 plus y squared equals 25. Now you'll see in order to get y solved, we'll have to get y alone. So y squared equals 0, which means y also equals 0. That's how we end up with a 0 in the y spot. So now let's say, well, what if x were -4? I'll do this one for you too. We would say -4 squared, which would be positive 16, plus y squared equals 25. So we need to get y alone. So y squared equals 25 minus 16, which is 9. So y is going to equal plus or minus 3. So if our x was in fact -4, then our y turns out to be plus or minus 3. The reason we need to put both is because that's how we end up graphing the whole circle. And you'll see that when we graph. So we work our way all the way through, all the way to 5. And sometimes you're going to have decimal numbers in these, and graphing won't be quite as easy because they're not whole numbers. But we work all the way through the spectrum from our negative to our positive that we solved for in the radius, and we find our y's, and now we're equipped to graph this circle. If we graph all of these points, it's going to make it a lot easier to draw an accurate circle. So let's start with the first coordinates, -5 and 0. Let's go -5 all the way over here and 0. There's our first point. The second one is -4 and plus 3. So let's go to -4 and positive 3. 1, 2, 3. There's our second point. But we also have the option of -4 and -3. And you'll see what happens here. -4 and -3. It's the exact mirror of that one, and it's what's going to keep our circle accurate. So then if x is -3, actually let's jump ahead and do one that's different. Let's do 0 and plus or minus 5. So if we're at 0 and positive 5, we go up to the top of the circle. 0 and -5, we come down to the bottom of the circle. Keep going all the way through, and then you have a lot of dots, a lot of coordinates to connect for your edge of the circle. And that's how we graph a circle. If it's challenging, keep coming back to the video. Use the videos in your homework. They no doubt may explain it better than I did. So use those videos. All right, let's look at example B. We have x plus 1 squared plus y minus 2 squared equals 9. That is an equation of a circle, and our radius, remember this represents r squared, so our radius equals 3. The equation of the circle can be written as x minus negative 1 squared plus y minus 2 squared equals 3 squared. That's what we would have started with before giving the final form of the circle. And we knew that the formula would say x minus. So in this case, we knew that the 1 was going to be negative. That represents our h. Remember, this is h, this is k. Those are the coordinates for the center of that circle. Let's see. Oh, this is what I was talking about. I don't know that your test question is like that, but it's that same reasoning. I see that this is positive. I know the equation calls for a minus sign here. So if there's a plus sign, that means the h had to be negative initially. Don't forget that. You want to remember that to get the problem right on your test, or maybe even more than one problem. So here we see that h equals negative 1, k equals 2, and the radius equals 3 because we knew that this represented r squared in the equation of a circle. So 9 equaled r squared, so r was plus or minus 3 actually. Okay, moving on. This tells us that the center is negative 1 and 2. Let's go look at how we would graph that. Here's our x and y coordinate. We want to graph, what did I say? Negative 1 and 2. So we come over negative 1, we go up 2, and there is the center of our circle. We then had already figured out that our radius was 3. So let's go 3 in every direction where it's easily countable. So that means on the axes or on the straight lines. And let's go 3 to the right, 1, 2, 3. Let's go 3 up, 1, 2, 3, 3 to the left, 1, 2, 3, 3 down, 1, 2, 3. And now we can connect, and we have a circle that fits this initial equation. Okay, let's see. I did do 2 more. I know it's kind of long. It's a lot to take in, but I hate not to keep going with you. I think I better, and you can use it depending on your needs. All right, so looking at the check it out 2a, we start with a graph that says x squared plus y squared equals 9. Let's look up here and see how we do this. Remember that 9 represents our radius squared. So our radius is going to be plus or minus 3. So this time for our table of x's and y's, to figure out the edge of this circle, we're going to go from positive 3 to negative 3, or from negative 3 to positive 3. So you'll see I started with negative 3, and I worked my way to positive 3. I tried each of those in this equation that I was given to find out what the y would be to go with each of these x's. So if x is negative 3 times negative 3 is 9. 9 minus 9 is 0. So y squared would equal 0, which means the square root of 0 would also equal 0. So that's the first point, negative 3 and 0. Let's look at that. Negative 3 and 0 plotted right there. The others were a little more tricky until we got back to positive 3 because they came out to be radicals and decimals, but it was still doable. So you know how to do that math. Let's just walk through 1. So we would have x squared plus y squared equals 9. And if we plugged in negative 2 right here, negative 2 times negative 2 would be positive 4 plus y squared equals 9. Y squared would equal 5 because we subtracted 4 from both sides. And that means y would have to equal radical 5. So I put radical 5 in my chart, but I can't really graph radical 5. So I found out what it was as a decimal. It is plus and minus 2.23. So basically 2 1/4. So I graphed both of those. Negative 2, I went to the negative 2 side, and then I graphed negative 2 with positive 2 1/4. So I went up 2 and roughly 1/4. I didn't do that very well, and it's not graph paper, so that didn't help either. And over negative 2 and down for the negative 2 1/4. So coming down to right here. But as you can see, even though these are kind of rough estimates of position, actually I was about to say it came out well. It didn't really. The shape is very amiss from a circle, but I think you're learning how to do the problem so you can handle it. Okay, let's see. I was going to tell you, oh, you need to use graph paper. Don't do what I did. I just need it in my book where I can easily walk through the lessons with you and have it at my fingertips, which is why mine is not done on graph paper. And the last one, I am not going to go through because this video is already 10.5 minutes. I'm just going to place it here for you to see what I did. And you can pause it, you can study it, you can ask me about it on Tuesday. But there it is for you to try it, to practice it, which I would encourage you to do before you leave this video. And there are your answers. All right, hope that helps.